Hello and welcome to SV Liban. We are a 26x Macgregor out of Calgary, Alberta, and this is a video about our first trip north of Vancouver from Horseshoe Bay to Gibsons and farther north. The trip started, or at least the trip of the boat started with Sunset Marina in Howe Sound. It's a very utilitarian marina. There's not a lot of facilities there, but it's a good place to kind of park the boat. The rates are kind of reasonable and launch from. This is the route we took to get over to Gibsons through Howe Sound. In the shadow of this island here, we stopped and had lunch. We had some chicken wings floating out on the water. That was pretty cool. And then we continued on to Gibsons Marina. This is partially the route that the Horseshoe Bay ferry would take. So we got to kind of follow the ferry, and that was kind of a neat sort of experience. One thing we did notice fairly quickly was we had a head-worn action cam, and the footage for that is incredibly hard to edit. It's constantly moving around and twisting up and down and tilting and stuff, so I do apologize for that. For anybody who's recording in the future, definitely get the chest worn cams, or perhaps attach it to the boat would probably be even better. It was an absolutely incredible experience getting the boat on the water. I'd been starting this journey probably 10 years ago, on and off. I started by taking the small little dinghy course. I bought a small catamaran, played around with that, did a little bit of Wednesday night racing on the 21-foot San Juans at Glenmore, and then I took the cruisers course, which is kind of the 25-foot class boats, which behave quite a bit differently than the small dinghies do. That was out at Ghost Lake, and then I had bought this boat, which I got transported up from Colorado to the border where I picked it up. And then I sailed it on Ghost Lake for a couple of years before we kind of grew tired of that. And then we tried to do this trip twice, actually. Or not this particular trip, but to do a cruising trip. And both times previously we had tried to go to Penticton. The first time we actually got so far as to put the boat in the water rather late at night, but it was in there. And then we had some unfortunate interactions with the staff there. And so at 4 o'clock in the morning, I made my poor wife help me pull the boat out of the water. And we went to a hotel and then went on a wine tour for the rest of the holiday. It wasn't the worst holiday by any stretch of the imagination, just wasn't what we were expecting. And then last year, we decided to get a new engine, and we took the boat up to Edmonton, about a 3-hour drive from Calgary, for them to put the new engine on. And when we went to pick it up, they said, yeah, we decided we're not putting the engine on, but we'll still sell you the engine. So we ended up with an engine and it not mounted, and it was the middle of summer, so nobody wanted to work on it. Of course, if you had a $120,000 ski boat, they're happy to do a $500 oil change for you, but sailboats, it's hard to find people to kind of touch them and work on them. So I lost another year. But this year we made it out, and it was absolutely incredible getting the boat in the water. And I'll still remember that first moment that I touched the seawater, because that was a huge goal of mine, to kind of do a saltwater trip. And yeah, that's probably something I'll remember for the rest of my days. It was just incredible. And getting my head wrapped around the fact that we're actually on the ocean now was really cool. It was really, really cool.
They're doing it.
The dinghy's not hooked up right now correctly. The right way to do it is to have a bridle on the dinghy and a bridle on the boat, and then a line between them. Here I've only got one line on the front of the dinghy, one line on the boat. it's causing it to track to the side. It's causing it to wave back and forth too much. So I definitely wouldn't suggest doing that. It's one of those learning things that I had many opportunities to do on my first trip here. That's just beautiful mountains and scenery, eh? That's certainly one thing that impressed me with the area is this difference between the flat ocean and then all of a sudden the islands erupting out of it. It was very stark and very very impressive. I really hope I can go to the area again. So we made it to Gibsons Marina. This was a really cool marina, incredible people. They were so helpful. We were noobs to the cruising aspect of it, so they really helped us in terms of kind of figuring out how that works. They helped us figure out where we're going to go for food and water and stuff like that. They were just so friendly and so helpful. Later on, it turns out we end up having to hop on the bus, and they helped us figure out the bus schedules and all sorts of stuff in that regard as well. Couldn't say enough good things about them. They're really fantastic people there. It's beside a provincial marina. We never used a provincial marina. I don't know what that's like. Apparently the rates are about the same. I don't know how the services kind of differ between them. First day we got there, it was a little stressful docking. We got her docked, but suffice to say it was not an easy experience for us. So we ended up actually going to a pub and having some beer and nachos. It was a really great time, a really cool way to wind down. It's about a 15-minute walk. There's this really beautiful gate on the way out. It's kind of a nice way to incorporate some artwork into the marina. Once you get outside that gate, across from the office, there's this small garden. And it's not very big. You can walk through it in, a minute and a half, 2 minutes. But it's just perfect because it's there to kind of like welcome all the cruisers to Gibsons. It's beautiful. There's lots of really nice flowers and trees in the area. It's peaceful. It's a good place to just sit down and kind of clear your thoughts for a few minutes. Especially if you're trying to figure out boating stuff and pulling weather reports and looking at maps and stuff like that on your iPhone. It's just a really nice break. This video is taken kind of at dusk, so it's not as bright and vibrant as it normally would have been. But during the height of the day, it's really beautiful in here and very peaceful. Where I'm from in Alberta, we don't have a lot of cedar trees. We've got lots of spruce and pine, but I can't really remember seeing any cedar trees. They probably need more moisture than we have in Alberta. They're really cool trees though. They got kind of this cool gnarly bark. They tend to grow very tall, very straight, and they can get very thick as well. I've seen cedars that are like, they got to be 6 feet thick. And they're just kind of really cool trees. And the wood form is actually really good for construction because it's somewhat rot resistant. Look at the mountains out there, eh? I wish I had a better shot of this gate here. But the whole thing is done up in aluminum or possibly steel. And it's got a nautical theme. There's dolphins, whales, porpoises, fish. And it's a really cool way to kind of incorporate a piece of art into the gate. So it's very welcoming and yeah, I love it. We did take one night and kind of walk along the docks, just having a look at all the other boats there, kind of dreaming about what our next boat might be. We definitely are going to be looking at something bigger. The Macgregor 26 has some fantastic benefits, namely that it's trailerable, so you can take it anywhere you want, and it's light enough to tow with pretty much any vehicle. But the inside is a little bit cramped for us, so we're looking at probably going to be 35 plus feet class sailboat is going to be our next one. This marina had a lot more sailboats than a lot of marinas I've been to. They were very friendly to sailboaters. There's definitely a crowd that wants to do the hop in, turn a key, and motorboat away. And I would say that's probably 80% of the industry. The sailboats are definitely in the minority. So it's kind of nice to see a marina that's comfortable and happy to have sailboaters around. This footage is actually from the previous day. I didn't get any footage of the bad weather that we encountered. We left Gibsons and tried to make our way north, and unfortunately the waves were really bad that day, and we ended up having to turn back. There was actually some guys that had big commercial boats that were snapping their dock lines and stuff. So this is the Gibsons Marina where we left from, and we went out toward the Strait of Georgia, and you can already see from the path that we ended up turning around and coming back. We did go out into the strait. I wanted to see what the conditions were like, what we'd be facing, and they were pretty bad. Like, the waves were crashing over the front of the boat. I was completely soaked. Our goal was to get to Buccaneer Bay, which was a bay with a really nice sandy beach in it, as part of this island right here, that little inlet you can see. That was going to be the jumping off point to get to Pender Harbor the next day. But as things tend to go when you're sailing, well, plans are plans and they change. So we came back and we went to Plumper's Cove and picked up a mooring ball and hang out for a while. Now, you may have asked why I didn't go through that gap in the island. Why did I go around the back? It turns out the navigation software we were consulting said that little gap was only about 0 to 6 feet deep. So we didn't want to risk kind of running aground, so we went the far way around.
I gave you a little bit more speed about 15 minutes
Again,
ago.
this is footage from the day before. This wasn't the difficult conditions we had encountered. I wasn't really thinking about filming at the time.
Wave a little bit, and so things stabilized a little bit, I think.
So eventually we did want to head up to Pender Harbor, mostly because the hotel we had booked up there, they weren't really interested in canceling the reservation. So we were stuck paying quite a bit for that. And so we were starting to work on how we were going to get up there. We figured out we had a pretty good solution with the bus schedules and stuff, so we were planning on doing that the next day. But we ended up going back to Gibsons Harbor here for dinner, and we had a bunch of steak in the fridge. And I got to tell you, cooking on the boat, there's nothing like it. Some of the best meals I've had have been cooking off the side of my Macgregor here. So in the tin foil, I believe we've got yams and carrots. And they've been roasting there for a while. These magma grills are a little bit tricky. You got to turn your food quite a bit because the inside, like the core of them, is extremely hot. It's like a flamethrower. And the edges are much, much cooler. So yeah, you got to keep rotating and turning your vegetables on them. It really was quite enjoyable to just sit there barbecuing, staring at all the other boats, staring at the amazing landscape. it was just a great time, just chilling out and making great food, talking to the people that were walking by. It turns out that if you're making some real nice food off the side of your boat, there's a lot of people that want to stop by and say hi. I'm kind of a chatty guy, so I'm quite happy to see what they're up to. These magma grills, the temperature control on the side of them honestly doesn't do very much. I think it's like a placebo to like make you feel better about what you're doing, but there's very little difference between the highest and lowest settings. So you can play with all you want, but basically it's either turned on in flamethrower mode or it's turned off. The lid does have a little leash. You might be able to see it in some of the shots. It's a little wire that I've got hooked onto the side of the boat. You can also hook on onto the barbecue itself, so that if you were to drop the lid, it would not splash into the water. It would just kind of hang off the side of the boat. Your food can fall off. I don't like cooking hot dogs on there or sausages for that reason. They'll roll around too easily, so things that are flat that won't roll around are certainly preferable. Didn't stop my father on a later trip from dropping my steak in the water, though. I'll never forgive him for that. At this point, I've realized that the propane is shot. The reason I left this in there is that there's a couple people who don't quite understand how the blue regulator fits into the magma grill. So it just shows how that's happening. These little torpedoes, we call them, are PVC pipe. This idea comes from Doug. He did a fantastic job, Doug Wendt. And their PVC pipe, the 4-inch one, fits the propane cylinders for the barbecue really well. The smaller one on top is a 3-inch, and that fits the butane for the stove really well. You'll also notice that the blue regulator, I screw it onto the bottle before I put it in the barbecue. And the reason for that is that if the regulator and propane bottle were to fall into the water, it would float. But if it's just the regulator, it's going to sink. So whenever you're dangling something over the side of the boat, you're going to want to be as careful as you can about that. It does latch in. When you push the blue part into the silver part, it kind of latches in with a positive locking mechanism that you have to push out of the way when you want to pull it off. The lid also has a washer in it, in the handle, that allows you to clip it onto the side of the grill, as shown in this shot. A lot of people don't realize that it can do that, but that's standard feature on these things. Gives you windscreen, gives you somewhere to put the lid if you don't want to put it down on the benches. And the lid and handle do get quite hot. So if you're barbecuing with these guys, make sure you got a barbecue glove or a towel or something available, because it gets quite toasty. Or you get good with grabbing the lid with the tongs. That's a thing too. With all the wonderful smoke coming off of the steaks, we were quite popular that night. A lot of people were saying hi. Oh, look at that, eh? Fantastic. I may have just pulled a piece off and eaten it. Don't tell anybody. So at the end of this day, of course we went to bed, but then the next morning we woke up. That's when we hopped on the bus and started making our way toward Pender Harbor. So there's a lot of planning this night and phone calls trying to figure out, hey, where can we rent a car and how are we going to get there and how are we going to get there and what are the rules for riding the bus during COVID and all this sort of stuff. So we were actually quite busy, for the next couple of hours after this, trying to sort all this stuff out and figuring where the bus stops were. And it was surprisingly busy. That's one thing that really shocked me, was how you can be on vacation and yet busy all the time. It's hard to keep the boat clean, especially when you have to disassemble the table to sleep on top of it at night and then put it all back together and not enough room for anything. Oh, so it wasn't sweet potatoes, it was actually normal potatoes, white potatoes, and carrots. Still tasted fantastic, and the steak was to die for. Salt, pepper, garlic salt, or garlic, pepper, and onions. So that's Gibsons, where we'd be leaving from. Halfway up here, we've got, say, Schalt. That's that urban center in the middle there, where we're going to rent a car. And then we're going to drive up to Pender Harbor. Now, Pender Harbor, we had a hotel booked, and we couldn't refund the money, so we kind of wanted to go. It's a really nice area. To be honest, the hotel was really expensive and wasn't really that fancy. We weren't very impressed at all with the hotel. So I would like to go to the area again, but I think I'd do it on a boat because it's a very beautiful place. I just want to experience it differently. So this is on our way back from Pender Harbor. We stopped in Seychelles where we rented the car, and the beach here is really rocky. It's got these 1.5 inch sized rocks. They're not pointy, they're round, as is typical near the water courses, but your foot would sink into them. You're stepping on them. It wasn't very comfortable. I don't imagine this beach, despite its rather large size, it goes the length of the city, really gets used much, just because it's not that enjoyable. Linda wanted to go dip her toes in. Yeah, when she tries to get out, her feet start sinking into the rocks as the waves go by, and then her flip-flop falls off, and so you'll hear her scream for some help as the sea tries to suck her flip-flop off and take it back out into the middle of the water. There's a path that goes the length of the beach above it, and I think there's 5 or 6 of these kind of circle garden things that are really pretty. They got some real nice flowers in them and stuff like that. And I think there's a wharf on each end. You'll be able to see one of them here. At the other wharf, there appeared to be some porpoises, I think, hanging out, because there's quite a crowd there, and I think they gather to feed the porpoises, or the porpoises know the people drop food or something. But it seemed to be like there was an understanding between the humans and porpoises in the area. I think they are porpoises in this area. I don't think they have dolphins. I could be wrong about that, though. Yeah, there's the wharf. So now we've made it back to Gibsons on the bus, and we're getting ready to do our trip home to Sunset Marina. We decided to go the long way around the island. It was farther, probably 60% farther than if we had gone the same way we came in, but we kind of wanted to see the other side of the island. We also kind of wanted to sail through the Strait of Georgia because we did go out in the Strait of Georgia a couple days previous, and the weather was so bad we had to turn back. So there was something nice about kind of closing off the loop.
Whenever you're ready, my love.
This is us just casting off, getting ready to head home. You'll notice the dinghy's tied up a lot closer than before. That way I don't suck the rope into the prop like I did when I was docking, like 2 days earlier, and 10 seconds before I'm docking, suck the rope in. All of a sudden the engine stops, and that wasn't very fun. Linda's fending us off the adjacent boat. We would have been okay anyway. We're noticing that if we go real slow, things tend to go better for us. So if there's no wind, you might as well take your time. If there's wind, maybe not, because you're always getting blown into something. We've got a great big solar arch on the back as well. A couple pieces of steel and some tube and stuff, and then a 350-watt solar panel, which was awesome because that charges 2 golf cart batteries that we have as our house bank, and that allows us to run the fridge all night, no problem, as well as all of our electronics. The Macgregor really tends to kind of slide out when you turn it, and so I was just kind of experimenting to see how bad that really was. So effectively, I'm intending to steer into this boat, but you'll see that as I get closer to it, the Macgregor spins out so far that we end up missing it by like 3 or 4 feet. In fact, Linda can't even reach it with the pole. So it's really kind of surprising just how fast it spins out on the turns. So turn early, I guess, is the lesson we learned here. That's the provincial marina ahead of us. Gibsons would be to the left and behind us as we leave the rock wall here. Bye-bye, Gibsons. What great people. I was just totally floored by how friendly they were, how helpful they were, especially compared to some of the other marinas we were in. Man, look at that landscape, eh? Isn't that beautiful? That's a navigation buoy off to the right. We had to keep that on our right-hand side for navigation reasons. So we're on our way home now. This is us traveling out of Howe Sound into the Strait of Georgia, where we had to turn back earlier. I'm down below making toast, and that was fun because the boat was bobbing back and forth, so I had to hold the stove level as we bobbed back and forth so that stuff wouldn't fall out. This is getting close to the home marina where the truck was stored, and it was just really beautiful looking up into the sound. These colors were really vivid when we saw them live, but the video didn't really pick it up as well. the rays of sunlight coming through the clouds were just phenomenal. I'd really like to go back to this area and do it again, maybe. Definitely up near Pender Harbor. That'd be a really cool area to explore.
Yep. Alright, so now it's not to see where I'm going yet.
So it really was a great trip. It was kind of the trip of a lifetime, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to do it. Real dream come true.